Every day on this channel, I go through everything Elon said on X in the last 24 hours. And this is how many times Elon posted about each subject today. I'll go through everything he said about each topic before moving on to the next one. And starting with Tesla, the Tesla account posted that the future is golden and Elon reposted it. And all he says, track mode on the Model 3 Performance is so underrated. You'll never find this level of customization on an ICE car. Basically, that mode responds even more precisely to your inputs on the track, thanks to entirely new controls and calibration within powertrain and adaptive damping. And Elon reposted this as well. And Louis says it's interesting to see how different language models check to see if an even number, a big number, is a prime number. ChatGPT uses NumPy to test the number numerically, and Grok instantly sees that it's even and not prime. Here are the contrasting answers, ChatGPT on the left and Grok on the right. Elon quoted this saying, Grok. And just some guy says that Grok relies on legacy media for its facts, and Elon says we're working on fixing that. And most dads brag about their grill skills. Mine casually texts that he's running Grok code fast 1 with parallelizing agents because it's flow state on tap. Peak dad energy. And Elon reposted this. And Elon showed us his Grok Imagine prompt with an added speech prompt, everyone is eating bananas.
Everyone is eating bananas.
Now, before we get into politics today, there's two posts from Elon that we should read. He said we cannot understand the true nature of the universe unless we question deeply. I want to know what is real, even if the answer is total obliteration of my consciousness. And then he said, you'll thank me later. And that has 201,000 likes in 20 hours. And this is insane. Canada imported 36% of its population in the last 10 years. And that's just what they tracked. They didn't provide the numbers for those who entered illegally because they have no idea. To put this in perspective, 5% would be huge. 10% would be a crisis. 36% is an atomic bomb going off in every major city. No country on earth, not even the United States, has the infrastructure necessary to successfully integrate this many people in such a short amount of time. And Elon quoted that saying, wow. And maybe you guys caught the story yesterday of the Ukrainian woman being murdered on public transit. And the person who murdered her had been arrested for crimes several times and routinely released by judges. Kaizen said after the Ukrainian woman was murdered, the mayor issued a statement exclusively defending the homeless and mentally ill. There's no mention of the killer's 14 arrests and multiple felonies. Our empathy keeps getting used to excuse evil, and it's literally killing us. And Elon said, exactly. And the judge, Teresa Stokes, who released the 14-time criminal DeCarlos Brown who committed the murder, is also the director of operations at Second Chance Services, a mental health and addiction clinic in Charlotte, North Carolina. Does this judge release violent criminals into her treatment center to get paid by a government contract? Investigate this racket. Elon says it does sound like a possible conflict of interest. And the Ukrainian's woman name was Irina Zarutska, and Peachy says it happened to a young girl from her hometown Pacific Palisades a few years ago. The story never made national news, it was a blip in the local news. Brianna Kupfer say her name, and Elon says there's many such stories or lack thereof. Here is another one. She was killed yesterday while walking her dog in Auburn, Alabama. Rashad Dabney arrested and charged. The victim was Julie Schnell, and Elon responded with 2 exclamation marks. And so Congressman Randy Fine says, I'm going to introduce legislation to hold judges accountable when violent repeat offenders they release commit new crimes. It's easy to release criminals when you are protected by an armed bailiff at all times. The rest of us aren't so lucky. Those 12-plus judges that released DeCarlos Brown should have their day in court too. And Elon said this is sorely needed. And do you remember Darrell Brooks Jr., the Waukesha Christmas parade killer? In July of 2020, he was charged with 3 felonies and one of them for shooting his own nephew. The cash bond was set at $10,000 in July. In August, it was lowered to $7,500. In February 2021, it was adjusted all the way down to $500. That cash bond was posted in May. 6 months later, he murdered 6 people and injured 62 at the parade. There was a GoFundMe to raise bail money for this monster. 5 days ago, Brooks requested another extension to appeal. Elon said the judge who set the pathetic $500 bail should be in prison. Xavier says, so let me get this straight. A bartender can go to prison for serving drinks to a drunk person if they drive and murder someone, but judges aren't accountable after letting a 14-time repeat offender murder a young woman. Elon said, let's change the law. Between now and then, name and shame the DAs and judges who enable murder, rape, and robbery. But especially shame those who funded the campaigns of the district attorneys and judges. That will make the biggest difference. And Wokeness was pointing out how there was no mainstream media stories on this attack on the Ukrainian woman. So Lucas says this is a total unwinnable story for them. If you're a left-wing spin doctor, this basically is the worst case scenario. It's completely savage, unprovoked murder with zero room for debate. It's all on video. It's obviously a thuggish black perpetrator with a zillion prior convictions led off by judges who don't believe in prison or black crime. And an attractive girl slaughtered because she didn't know the secret unspoken rules about who not to sit by. Victim literally a Ukrainian refugee who managed to escape a war only to be killed using basic American public transit. Incidents much more representative of what crime in the US looks like than any recent left-wing outrage case. Cannot be hand-waved as a fluke. Every left-wing propagandist who touches this is doxing as a huge retard. And Elon quotes that with a bullseye. C3 says, having kids. I keep thinking of a tiny girl taking a bus ride home after working at a pizza shop, not bothering anyone, and getting murdered. I want to cry for her. Then I think about how it happened, and I want to rage. I want everyone responsible ruined. Everyone. And Elon says, same. Amory King says that white people are victims of black violence at insanely disproportionate rates, and it's not even close. He says black on white violent incidents totaled 2.38 million between 2017 and 2021, and white on black totaled 0.37 million. So the annual victimization rates per 1,000 are whites by blacks 2.4 and blacks by whites 1.8. Per capita offending rates per 1,000, blacks against whites 11.6, whites against blacks 0.38. And there are the numbers for homicides, and too long didn't read. A white person is 31 times more likely to be victimized by a black person than the other way around. Black people make up only 13% of the American population. He says, tell me we aren't being hunted. Elon says, did you know this? These are just the facts as reported by the government. One can argue about what the solution may be, but the facts are accurate. And Matt Walsh says there are a lot of people, even on the right, who don't want to talk about the racial angle of these crimes. But here's the fact. If I told you that a person was randomly butchered on a train and then I asked you to guess the race of the assailant, you would guess black and be correct nearly every time. That's just the simple reality. We all know it. There is a very obvious pattern here, well established over the course of many decades. The dividing line is not between those who recognize it and those who don't. We all recognize it. The line is between those who are willing to say it out loud and those who aren't. Someone responds saying, if I told you to guess the race of the school shooter from the other week, what would your guess be? And Elon replies, trans. Someone replies to Elon saying, why are you not allowed to search White Lives Matter on TikTok, but Black Lives Matter is allowed? And Elon responded saying, really? And then someone responded to Elon with evidence that no results are found when you search White Lives Matter. And as we looked at yesterday, there's sort of a problem in the US where a lot of people who are not white are getting booked as being white in crime statistics. Lauren says, as disproportionate as the crime stats appear to be, the reality is even worse. Has a mistake ever been made the other way? A white man getting booked as black? Brian says, is this graphic true, Grok? And Grok says, based on records and archives in the registry, the graphic is accurate. Elon responds, interesting. And then he posts a standalone post saying, are you awake now? With 224,000 likes. And he also responded to Lauren commenting on the crime statistics, and he said, this seems to be happening a lot. And Stefan says that this was almost me in 2021. I was on the CTA Blue Line when a man dressed in all black and a shiesty mask walked between the train cars, reached into his backpack, and put a handgun to my head. He didn't rob me. He watched me begin to cry, laughed, and then went to the next car. I was almost one of those stories they publish on page 5 of the Tribune, where you go, oh, that's too bad, and quickly forget. It is emotionally scarring for even the strongest person. And Stefan goes on about the problem of crime in Chicago and that we need to support these representatives and others that speak real truth to power. Refuse to let others weaponize your empathy and good nature against you. Demand change or it will happen to you or someone you love. We don't have to live like this. And Elon says, wow. And Mike Ben says that when you see how beautiful Irina was, it's likely she intentionally dressed in a baggy t-shirt with glasses and hat with her hair up to ride the light rail, but specifically because she had a natural fear that otherwise might draw unwanted attention, and the animal still killed her. Elon said, yeah, she did everything she could to dress down and was still brutally butchered. And Mr. King says people talk a lot about mental capacity and insanity with respect to murderers now. This black guy who killed the Ukrainian is going to have people saying this. Meet Albert Fish. He was a child molester and murderer who sent letters to the families of his victims explaining what he did. At trial, he pleaded insanity. He was convicted and executed. Jurors believed he was insane but thought he should be executed anyway. Before his electrocution, he said, "I don't even know why I'm here." Jurors in the 1930s had a stiffer spine and better grasp on human nature. The real Fred Garvin says, "I don't give a F if they are crazier than Cooter Brown. If you are a murderer or child molester, you forfeited the right to life. Execute with extreme prejudice." And Elon says, yes. And here's 13 mugshots of DeCarlos Brown. The judges and district attorneys that let him back in the street need to be dealt with. And so Elon asked Grok to provide a list of the names of the judges and district attorneys who continuously let him go. Alpha says the judge and prosecutor who let him off need to go to prison, and Elon agreed. And here is just another murder the mainstream media ignored because it didn't fit the narrative. In May, Logan Federico, a 20-year-old college student, was visiting a friend in North Carolina when a career criminal, Alexander Dickey, went on a violent rampage. He broke into her friend's house and shot and killed her, and Dickey had nearly 40 prior arrests. In 2023, despite a long history of burglary, he was given probation for what should have been his third conviction. He was sentenced to 5 years but served only 400 days. Elon said, "How many violent offender arrests before imprisonment? Empathy for the murderer instead of the murdered is pure evil." AJ says that this image has done more damage to the anti-car, pro-public transit movement than 50% across the board budget cuts ever could. Sorry, transit bros. Unless progressive stances on crime, punishment, and urban dysfunction are rolled back drastically, then the future of mobility will be won by autonomous vehicles, especially once the labor unions are pushed aside. Elon said, "True words." I should have put that one in the Tesla section. Peter Sweden says the anti-West agenda that we see is not limited to just that. There's also an anti-Christian agenda and an anti-family agenda and an anti-childbirth agenda. Why is that? Almost feels like it's an agenda against our very existence. Elon says, true. And based Mike Lee says mailing a ballot to every voter has proven far too risky. Sure, there are things that can make it safer, just as there are things that could make it slightly less unsafe to keep a lion in your home as a pet, but why take on the risk? Is it time to end universal mail-in voting? Wade Miller says a friend in Colorado just sent this to me. Her daughter hasn't been a legal resident in Colorado for over a decade, and these are the mail-in ballots that have been sent to her over the last 10 years. A gaping hole where fraud could be occurring at a massive scale. Elon says mail-in ballots with no proof of ID are a massive source of fraud. Back in July of 2012, Elon tweeted, "People ought to think more about who wrote the software that's running in their head. It probably wasn't them." So today Penny quoted saying Elon knew about the mind virus 15 years ago. I'm not sure about the math on that one. But Elon says society has been a slow-motion train wreck since then. And then he quoted that 2012 tweet saying, "Have you ever wondered?" And Eric says paid protesters stood outside the US Open in New York City and begged attendees walking in, "Boo Trump today."
Boo Trump today! Boo Trump today!
Data Republicans said if the Trump administration is serious about cracking down on paid protesters, the trail starts with Alliance for Global Justice. They serve as the fiscal sponsor behind Refuse Fascism, the group that organized the US Open protest. In Germany today, a Syrian asylum seeker hunted down a woman in broad daylight. Witnesses watched in horror as he eventually caught up to her. Elon says, "What the hell?" Christian replied, "Cowards are the real problem of the West." And Elon said, "Yes." And Elon posted a link to this political article titled, "I'm gonna punch you in your f***ing face." And he captioned it, And the article discusses the deteriorating relationship between Elon and Trump, framing it as a significant shift from their previous close alliance. And the article portrays all of this as a high-stakes fallout with Musk's companies now vulnerable to bureaucratic retaliation. And Mike Lee says, repost this if you think this is yet another good reason to end universal mail-in voting. The picture says, on what planet should a union that can endorse a presidential candidate be allowed to collect and deliver the ballots for that election? And Elon reposted it. And Eric says, this man, this is Daniel Penny, prevented a tragedy. He paid dearly and went through hell, but no doubt he saved a life that day. Daniel Penny is a U.S. Marine veteran. and he was acquitted of manslaughter charges after restraining Jordan Neely, a homeless man threatening subway passengers in 2023, and he got him with a chokehold that led to Neely's death. According to a 2025 Gallup poll, 58% of Americans view him as a hero. Elon seems to as well. Right Pulse News says, developing. Do you support Daniel Penny suing Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg for malicious prosecution? Yes or no? And Elon says yes. We saw yesterday Elon post that white people are a rapidly diminishing minority of global population. Luke says there's no such thing as white people. Skin color is entirely irrelevant. Culture matters, but there are numerous cultures practiced by people with lighter skin tone. Mr. Burns says I agree, but if others see color and act on this, their perception becomes reality whether I agree with it or not. And Elon says bullseye. And once again, Graham Linehan was right. You don't tell children they could be born in the wrong body, because they are children, and they will believe you. And Elon reposted this. And a UK judge wishes convicted Al-Qaeda terrorist who killed 52 in a London bus bombing all the best as he prepares to walk free in Britain. Elon says releasing a mass murderer with no monitoring is obviously extremely dangerous to the public. And more news in the UK, Banksy artwork of a judge attacking a neutral protester appears outside the Royal Courts of Justice amid the free speech controversy. Barry says this Banksy, which appeared overnight on the side of the Royal Courts of Justice building in London, is extremely powerful. And Elon said, accurate. And 1 hour after the new Banksy was revealed that was mocking the courts for censoring people, the courts censored it by covering it up, proving a point. Elon says the more they try to cover it up, the more it will appear. And a 15-year-old migrant put in a UK school turned out to be 21. After sexually harassing girls, he later murdered a young Royal Marine. Authorities then discovered he'd already killed 2 people in Serbia. This is the United Kingdom, and it must change. Elon says it's time for real change. And this is Judge Sarah Pinder. She has been working as an immigration judge of the Upper Tribunal Immigration and Asylum Chamber since 2024. She hears cases in and around Birmingham. In February, she permitted a convicted Zimbabwean pedophile to avoid deportation. This was right after the foreign pedophile's lawyers said he would face hostility if he was deported back to his home country. The Home Office said that they would not disclose the predator's offenses to the Zimbabwean authorities. But for Pinder, that wasn't good enough. She also later blocked the deportation of a Jamaican drug dealer who beat his partner partly because his gender-questioning child only felt comfortable speaking to him. You read that right. Pinder added that the career criminal's mixed-race children would suffer unmet emotional needs not just from losing a parent, but from losing the parent who represents half of their cultural identity. Researchers later found she'd authored dozens of articles for the pro-open borders website Free Movement. The organization boasts a host of immigration activists as editors, all of which advocate for more lenient border controls. Some of the arguments she made in those articles, exactly as one might expect, calling for opening new asylum routes specifically for Afghan migrants and relaxing existing visa laws. Even as Times authors now admit, people who become migration judges tend to be migration lawyers, and that such lawyers generally got into the field to protect migrants' rights, not borders. Witness the slow march on our judiciary. Elon says she should bear responsibility for what harm they inflict by not being deported. And here's Elon speaking about mass immigration.
The mass immigration is insane and will lead to the destruction of any country that allows unfettered mass immigration. That country will simply cease to exist. At the end of the day, it is a numbers game, a numbers situation. If there are 8 billion people in the world, and let's say you're a country of 50 million, 60 million, or for a medium-sized country, but even for a country like the United States, which is 350 million, given that there are 8 billion people in the world, it only takes a few percent of the rest of the world to move to the country to where it is no longer that country. A country is not its geography. A country is its people. This is a fundamental concept that is truly obvious.
And Elon reposted that. Wall Street Math says Africa has 54 countries. Asia has 48 countries. There are 51 countries with a Muslim majority. Nobody from Africa, Asia, or a Muslim country needs to come to Europe or the USA for asylum. They have plenty of countries closer and more culturally aligned to them. Send them back. Elon said this is not accidental. The radical left is importing voters, and it's a sure way to win if not stopped. Evelina said, when I studied at university, I lived in a heavily immigrant populated area in Sweden. Just 50 meters from my dorm, a girl was robbed. In the neighborhood, there were 2 more robberies targeting girls, a rape, and car burnings where my own car was parked. On the way to the grocery, an immigrant gang walked behind me and called me a tall blonde whore. I was terrified. I called the police twice because of loud explosions in the middle of the night right on my street, which lit up my dorm room completely. The police neglected me. This was in 2015, before the true impact of Sweden's explosive mass immigration began to be fully visible. Imagine what it's like today. We can't allow this to continue. These immigrants need to leave. It's the only solution. And Elon reposted this. In breaking news, Ireland's Deputy Prime Minister Simon Harris has ordered his party to block independent candidates, including front-runner Conor McGregor, from running for President of Ireland. This is completely undemocratic. The Irish people cannot stand for this. Elon says shame on Simon Harris for tyrannically blocking the will of the people of Ireland. Conor McGregor for president to save Ireland. The Deputy Prime Minister Simon Harris then lashes out at Elon Musk for backing McGregor.
I mean, this is balderdash, Ben, and it's the latest attempt at disinformation and misinformation, which I see Elon Musk joined in today. Sure, why not? Backing a man who has been found civilly liable for rape in our courts. That's the sort of man he believes should be president of Ireland. Well, thank God he might have a say in who's president of the United States of America, but he's no say in terms of who the president of Ireland is. It's an utter nonsense, Ben. The Fine Gael party is backing the Fine Gael candidate. Hold the front page.
Tom says, do the Irish people have say? And Elon says, this is what matters. Joey says they know Conor McGregor would win, and Elon agrees. And Constantine said the media's silence on Irina Zarutska's murder is one of the most disgusting acts of lying by omission I've ever seen. From the people who gave you the Daniel Penny wall-to-wall negative coverage and the BLM moral panic, it's true what they say, you don't hate the media enough. And Elon reposted it. He says, now do you understand how much the legacy media lies simply by ignoring a subject? Choice of narrative is their primary form of deception. And Wikipedia's left-wing editors are scrubbing the Doreen St. Felix scandal from her bio. They're deleting references to Fox News, the New York Post, and the Daily Wire. Sean McGuire says Wikipedia has been captured by radical leftists for years. Still a good source on certain topics, for example math and physics, but completely captured on hot-button political topics, and Elon says true. And Wokeness says if not for X, we wouldn't know about any of these attacks. Elon responds with 2 exclamation marks.
It's the whole thing's very crazy. I mean, the media is incredibly partisan. I mean, they're not. Almost all the media is left shifted.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird if you talk to somebody who gets all their information from like what I call legacy media. They're living in a different world.
Yeah.
Than if they say are listening to your podcast or getting news from X or just if it's kind of wild. Like
it is very wild.
Like you talked, it's like they're living in an alternate reality.
Oh, there's a lot of people that I talk to that I have to go, where did you hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, like the Associated Press, which I call Associated Propaganda, the AP. They ran a international news story saying that Doge fired air traffic controllers, but we didn't fire any air traffic controllers at all. In fact, we're trying to hire air traffic controllers, not fire them.
Yeah, I saw that. You made a tweet about it, right?
And Elon reposted that today. And Liz Wheeler points out that the New York Times wrote 0 articles about Irina Zarutska. Elon says, yes, the New York Times is an utter lie. And here's X forcing the media to watch the murder of Irina Zarutska. Elon says, exactly. Elon says as soon as anyone does the slightest bit of research beyond what the legacy news reports, the magnitude of legacy media lies is staggering. Do some research and it will feel like waking up from a fever dream. Here's the legacy media shining their light on negative news about Elon, and positive news about Elon remains in the shadows. And Elon has a laugh at that one. And Elon posted this video.
What if laziness is a habit of thinking about the cost of things or the effort instead of thinking about the payoff? I'm going to say it again to get a few more heads to explode. What if laziness is nothing but a habit of thinking about the effort instead of thinking about the outcome? What if you could reverse laziness by simply developing a habit of thinking more about the, let's say, the delicious food that you would like to enjoy instead of how long it would take you to get up and go get it? So, but the real question is, if you were to test this at home and try to see if you can think more about the good outcome and less about the work, would you get it done? Why is it that people have a second child? Why does a woman who goes through this awful, awful childbirth have a second child? Don't they always say the same thing? If I remembered how bad this was, I wouldn't do it again, right? So the not thinking about the effort is vital to actually the survival of humanity. If we focused on how hard it was to have a baby, you just wouldn't do it, or you do too little of it. But if you focus on how awesome it would be to have a family, well, there you go. You're going to go through the pain because you've already committed. Am I ambitious, or do I simply have a thinking habit which produces dopamine because I'm thinking about the positive outcome? And is the dopamine the thing that gets me up and moving? And when you're observing me, you say, how the hell do you get so much done, right? And how do I do it? I think it's just this. When I think of all the things I do, I think about them in terms of their benefits. So here's your tip. It's going to change some of your lives.
It's very rare that Elon posts self-help. That was nice. And Zach Asmongold said the biggest threat to America isn't Hamas, Venezuelan gangs, or violent migrants. It's upper middle class, primarily white women who would import all of the above to destroy the country in order to satisfy their suicidal empathy. Grum says he's right, and the men who pretend to go along with them for obvious reasons. And Elon says the grovelers are not men, they are cowards. And 50,000 art hose will save San Francisco. The vision for jumpstarting joie de vivre and re-enchanting hollowed out tech bros. DMs are open for venture-related inquiries only, and Elon says worth a try. And Mike Solana said on a recent episode of The Real Science of Sport, Malcolm Gladwell said he felt cowed into supporting the inclusion of trans women in women's sports back in 2022. He now says, obviously this was always crazy, everyone knew it was crazy, and the only reason we, not me, pretended it was not crazy is we were terrified of the left-wing media blob. Mike said, I almost defended Malcolm Gladwell, as it takes courage to admit you're wrong. But then I remembered his debate with Matt Taibbi, where he repeatedly implied Matt was racist for no longer trusting the media. Gladwell wasn't cowed by the system, he was part of it. And Elon reposted this. So, that is everything that Elon said today. It was pretty much all politics, as you saw. And in Ireland, I was sad to see that news. I hope they find a way that Conor McGregor can still run. And Elon said, you'll thank me later. So let me know in the comments what you think he meant by that. And as always, if you guys want early access to these videos or you just want to support the channel, you can do so by joining the channel as a member. And I'll see you guys tomorrow.